Ortona itself was reached. Highway 16 ran along a rather hog-bag ridge between the ravine, which we had so much difficulty in crossing, and another ravine which started near the crossroads. and ended in a sort of pancake shape, a plateau, about 300 or 400 feet above the sea, in which in medieval times a castle had been built, and around which a medieval town sprang up. Since then, of course, the architecture had kept pace with the Italian mode of the day, and you had a mixture of modern and ancient buildings in this town. The Edmonton Regiment of the 2nd Brigade led the advance, supported by tanks. The Seaforth was brought up to join the Edmontons. The town was divided into 2 sectors, one to each battalion, which was given the task of house clearing throughout the town. For the next 7 days, the 2nd Brigade, both these battalions, fought from house to house in Ortona against the German parachutists. Neither side gave or offered any quarter.
I recall very clearly moving into our positions in front of the Morro and Ortona, going to visit the Patricias just before first light, and coming out of Colonel Ware's headquarters, I saw this huge dome of the church in Ortona overlooking his battalion position. This alarmed me somewhat, so I ordered up some tanks, and the tanks immediately, of course, demolished half the dome of the church and destroyed it as an observation post, which I'm sure was the main purpose of it up to that point.
Ortona was one of the first areas where we got into street fighting. It was an area where we were, required to go through a town and actually clear a town or a city out. Now, in those particular cases, we at that time had some automatic weapons, Sten guns and Thompson submachine guns. And that was a question of, being fairly close to the other people, closer than you would like to be.
The Germans were entrenched in every house, even in church steeples. They had the machine gun installed, they had SP guns, the other side of the town itself. And every house was fortified. We had to gain house by house.
When an entire platoon of the Edmonton Regiment was wiped out by the Germans blowing a house in on top of them, the Germans having, prior to the detonation, been occupying the room next door, or the house next door, I talked with the commander of sappers in an effort to develop some weapon that we could use. And of course, our engineers being what they were, they quickly came up with a charge of amatol, which we were able to put into old 4-gallon petrol cans. And from that time on, we did our share of blowing in houses on the Germans. And this was indeed an equalizer.
They had the advantage of being sort of in there. They usually had a few tanks. And I might tell you, when they moved in, we ran. And anybody that thinks that that's cowardly or anything else, I never had any feelings that way at all. I just turned around and got the hell out of there as fast as I could, along with the rest of the people. And we didn't leave people behind or anything. In fact, if anybody was wounded or anything, you were duty-bound as an insurance policy for yourself as well to see that they came with you. But nonetheless, you had to move out quickly and move back in again, because those tanks, there was no way you could deal with them. Maybe if you had a Piet gun and you could have somebody there with that Piet gun, you could once in a while knock out a tank, and there were a few people in our regiment that did just that. But mainly it was a question of moving out of the way of those tanks and moving back in.
The Germans would sneak in through the rubble and plant these pronged shoe mines, anti-personnel mines, and with the battle being so fluid in Ortona during a period there, we never knew where we were going to run into mines.
It was a different kind of fighting at Ortona. I think it was a pretty savage period of fighting, fairly prolonged, And I don't know just the exact sequences. It was one of those rather odd times. It was Christmas, when people think of something else rather than war. And we did get a Christmas dinner out of that particular battle, moving units out of the line periodically for their dinner and a bottle of beer or some wine, and back into the line again. That's a bit of a contradiction, you know, peace, goodwill, and all that sort of thing, but it's one of the contradictions that war sometimes produces.